This is part of our topic called experiences in medicine. And one of the things I get asked a lot is, should I be a doctor? Does it make a difference whether you go to DO school or MD school? And what about being an MP or what about being a PA? And I term this topic, what is the value of a medical education? One of the things that is significant in the United States is the cost of medical education. I think most people, if you review what happens, the cost, I think it costs maybe about 250,000 to maybe 300,000 averagely, a debt that a medical student will incur over a 4-year value of a medical education. And then what's the value? I think it was President Obama who at one point was arguing why people go to school for 4 years and then subsequently after that cannot get a job and end up working at McDonald's. So what's the value of medical education? Enough studies have already occurred that says that by the time somebody becomes a doctor, and we've compared the care delivered by primary care doctors and nurse practitioners, and we've actually realized that there's really not much of a difference in several studies in the literature. And you wonder, really? Yes. And not only that, by the time you spend time, maybe 4 years nursing, in a year and a half as a nurse practitioner, and you practice, you're probably going to get paid the same amount for the same work, whether you're a physician or nurse practitioner. The advantage, of course, of a nurse practitioner in a state like New York, it's like a physician may pay $40,000 for malpractice, and a nurse practitioner may be $1,000 for malpractice. So in the long run, to hire a nurse practitioner becomes more practical for any hospital or medical practice, because if a individual has spent $250,000 to go to medical school, and in addition it's going to cost $50,000 to have a malpractice, and you have somebody who spent maybe $50,000 to go to MP school and cost $500 to insure them for malpractice, automatically it's more profitable to hire a nurse practitioner than a medical doctor, because practically, especially in a capitalist society like ours, you are getting a big bang for your buck. Because one, study shows that there's no difference in care, and you're not going to be spending a lot of money to employ that medical doctor when you can clearly employ an MP who will get the same amount. So that answers the question, okay, so what is the value of this medical education? So why spend so much money doing that? Secondly, one of the problems with medical education in the United States is the fact that they have this system in which everybody does an exam which is called an MCAT, and of course, based on what is called an MCAT is where you get accepted. In other places, you do physics, chemistry, biology, maths, maybe Australia, UK, or Nigeria, and depending on what is called that marks, you probably will get accepted to medical school, and you could do an exam for each medical school and therefore get accepted in each medical school separately. But in the United States, as an industry where there's a monopoly of an MCAT and everybody uses the MCAT scores to get in, and therefore there becomes a question of whether people actually are selected properly, because you have a single monopolistic exam that determines who goes in. So if each school, let's say for example, John Hopkins does his own exam, maybe State University of New York does their own exam, it's likely that they will have a more diverse group of people who are going to enter, because people are no more studying towards the exam, and as they call doctors these days, high yield doctors, where they're only paying attention to what's going to come out in the exam and they don't actually know the material. And therefore people get high scores not because they actually know the material, but just because they have been trained by Princeton and Kaplan to study high yield things. So the value of a medical education probably in the United States is not as high as it should be. And essentially, it may be better to just decide to be an MP because it's cheaper. I'm just using an MP as an example rather than a medical doctor. However, for that to change, one has to create value to medical education. And that value has not yet, it's not being created as we speak now. And maybe no difference whether you do go to an MD school or a dual school, which is a question I asked for, because our education has virtually become identical. And the reality is that you will have to determine whether the populace mind or see a significant difference in seeing a physician compared to an MP. So I will receive further questions and I'll make further comments about this on in later videos, but because this was a response to many questions that I get asked, I was able to talk about what is really the value of the medical education.